All right. MeteorJS myths. That's what we're addressing this week. Now, there are a lot of different myths regarding Meteor. And the one that we care about this week, the one that we're looking at, are those related to the data layer. Things like Meteor only supports MongoDB. It's lousy as an option for API development or consumption. Or somehow or the other, MongoDB as a database is really bad as a data layer, and professional developers don't use it, and big companies don't use it. So those are the myths that we are addressing this week. But before I go any further, I'd like to also address a couple of housekeeping elements that we will be also taking up. One is we've gotten some complaints about the RSS feed for the traditional podcast feeds or podcast formats not being updated. And that is true. When we first started this, we tried to be as open and broad as possible in terms of the different platforms we distribute on, YouTube being the main one. We also had our stuff listed and then syndicated out of Spotify. We did that until about the beginning of December. And then, honestly, it's all on me. I've been doing this, and I stopped, partly because I wasn't really seeing any real usage, and I wasn't quite sure whether or not the usage that I was seeing was myself checking the feeds themselves or somebody else. Well, in the last month or so, we've heard from a few of our listeners and watchers that they're a little disappointed that they haven't been able to get updates on the feed. They asked if the feed was broken. The feed isn't broken. It's just that we haven't been updating this. So my promise is actually starting this weekend, we will be populating the feed with all the past episodes that have not made it up yet and getting them available to you. So you'll have them probably starting Sunday. You will see them appearing because it takes a little time once we get them in for them to populate through the RSS syndication, et cetera, et cetera. All right. And one last thing I also want to mention is we've been playing around a little bit with the show. Last week, you might have noticed that we spent a little more time in depth on specific news topics, and we're going to continue doing that because it seems to have a high degree of engagement. But one of the things that we haven't done very well is planning this out well enough in advance. And so normally we have our planning session on Monday, and then we do the episode on Friday, which doesn't really give us a lot of time to research into what's newsworthy out there and then develop stories about it and then present it in a coherent way. So we're going to be starting some longer term planning, looking out towards future episodes, and we're theming our episodes as we go forward. And so we can share those themes with you and get some feedback as to whether or not you think it's worthwhile. But the intention now is to try to do a 10-day planning period for the episodes so that we're able to provide a more coherent experience. So all of this is happening going forward on or after this episode, which is episode 28. And you're watching or listening to This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly newscast of the Meteor Dispatches podcast. And normally I say a bunch of other things and I can't remember right off the bat. I've gone right off script. So let me just tell you that I am Alim Gafar, broadcasting from New York City.
And I'm Dvorak, broadcasting from Prague, Czechia.
So with that, let's get right into the news. I mentioned just now that the RSS feed hadn't been updated for the traditional podcast platforms. As I said before, we're going to be updating it this weekend. And if you use it and you haven't, and you've been disappointed that you haven't seen it, please let us know. Put something in the comments. The more that we know how our podcast is being consumed, the more enthusiasm we'll have for spending the extra time making sure that it's available in as many ways as possible for you to get it. So with that, I'm going to pass the rest of this on now to Jan, who's got in these scammy times we live in, I don't think we're so far removed from them.
Yes, we have a not necessarily breaking news, but big alert. Everybody panic. Well, not really. We have a fake website impersonating a Meteor. So that came out on the Meteor forums from Tatiana, and the website is here. I will not mention it. It has kind of look at it. Doesn't look half bad design wise, but it has some. It's obviously a scam. It has some things that are just like completely nonsensical there as well. The only thing that I think that we point out, it has actually animated the Meteor logo for some weird reason. But yeah,
not the background. Not the
yeah,
background. Sort of an inversion of our site, right?
Exactly.
Like the background on the official Meteor site is animated, but the logo isn't. On this one, the logo is animated, background isn't. And maybe if they are listening to the program, they might go and change it. But I think one of the things, I did go to the site, and one of the things I noticed is that when you get to the page, there's, it really tries to, like, it's got a mishmash of some of the marketing information from the Meteor website, which again might persuade people to think that it is the Meteor website. But the big caution I'm going to make here is that there is a button that asks you to sign up or sign in, and that's where I think they're trying to capture your information. So don't don't click on it. Don't give them any reason to get your information. If you sign in with your Meteor credentials, that might give them access into the forums and onto the cloud in your account, and of course that could create all sorts of problems for you. And so
yes. So some mitigation, if you haven't already, enable two-factor authentication on your Meteor cloud. That should help mitigate these attacks. And there are some other let's say tips, and here's like some how maybe it tries to look inside and all that stuff. For me personally, what I'm going to show here is next DSN. In general, pretty much any DSN that's not the default ones can help you. And in my case, what I have a filter that disables me newly registered websites. So if I go to a newly registered website, I see, okay, this is a newly registered. So for example, in case if I was trying to go to the Meteor website and suddenly I got this blocker, hey, this is blocked because it's a newly registered domain, then I'll be like, okay, I'm not getting to where I want to go. So that's like one of the layer of defenses that you can have for these things. Next, DNS is what I personally use, but there are other out there as well. So
Jan, in terms of this blocking, does it really do this? Because sometimes they're legitimately newly registered domains, and it allows you then to say, oh, this is okay, and then you can override it. Okay.
Yes, it allows you to let me.
But it makes you actively think about what you're about to do.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So let me kind of show you here. This is the default thing, and it allows you here to have like presets for security, all the different things for privacy. It's actually where I have the different block lists. So I have a lot of them, and I can like block then the specific other things. So, and then I have here, of course, allow list. So for example, one of the newly registered domain recently I wanted to go to was the Congress.js Poland or Warsaw Congress website. It was newly registered. I want to go to it, so I added it to my allow list, and then I could go on there. Or if it's blocked by some other block list, if I add it to my allowance, it will override. So if I try to, let me pick up this scam website. If I try to go there, I'll get this blocking, and down here, if I zoom in, it will tell me it's blocked by newly registered domains. So that's, again, this is not a replacement for other protections, but it's one of the tools that I recommend. So, and that's, I think, enough of a shilling of product that has not paid us to advertise them.
Yes, it's certainly, something that, by the way, I want to just say this as a, sort of a quasi public service announcement, because people have asked us if we're accepting any sponsorships yet. And the idea is, yes, we will entertain it, we will consider it. And there are certain things, I think, where we could get some help. Right now, we are broadcasting at 720p over StreamYard. There is a different version of StreamYard that allows us to do these broadcasts in HD. There is no 4K right now for live streaming from a service like what we use, whether it's StreamYard or some other service. There are very few services out there that offers a 4K, and in a sense, we haven't taken advantage of it yet because we haven't done a lot of code online. And I think when we're actually getting to the point of showing a lot more code, and that's part of what we're going to be doing in future episodes as we go forward, is the resolution is going to matter at that point. So that is one of the things that we're going to be looking forward to. The other type of sponsorship I think that we can benefit from is hosting credits, because we would also like to be able to show full code examples with deployments and be able to run it, then have people go and be able to take a look at it and play with it. So if you are thinking of sponsoring the channel, I think these are the first two main ways that the channel can grow and improve. And I just want to throw that out there because we are starting to get a little more into showing details on the assets that we're putting up. So, just throwing it out there. If you are thinking about sponsorship offers, that's kind of where we're thinking right now. And if you want to support that, we would love to hear from you. We have heard from a couple right now, and that's along the lines of the conversation that we've been having. But if that's your interest in terms of supporting the channel, we would love that. That would be great. Okay, let me move on from there because we have other things going on. We've got some 3.0 news that I think we need to touch on.
Yes, let us blaze through the two news items regarding to releases. First with Meteor. Let's see if I can get this any bigger.
I love that segue, by the way, that blazing through. That's
Yes, because the second one is about Blaze. But first, we have about Meteor 3.0 release. Beta 6 is out, which has updated Node, NPM, push to deploy, working with Meteor version 3 on Galaxy, and bug fixes. And there are some known workarounds around existing bugs that are just mainly in regards to version resolving, which will be resolved automatically once the actual Meteor 3 is released. So, or things progress further on. So that's beta 6. So please go and give it a try. You can see there's already been additional development since that release. So I expect beta 7 and other are going to be released soon as well. And then we have a beta for Blaze. So all the Blaze fans, version 2.9, beta 0 has been released. It has one bug fix and one new feature. It kind of moving towards, again, Meteor 3, which is implementing async dynamic attributes. So please, if you use that, go ahead and give it a try, and so that we can get more feedback and move forward on these releases towards actual releases like that.
Yeah. If you've been paying attention in the Slack, and some of us are there all the time, and some not so much. I noticed recently, Jan, and I don't know whether or not there's been any update on it, but Per Berglund, who is a longtime member and sometimes shows up on the channel here, he had mentioned that he was working with a release of Meteor recently, and I don't know if he's talking about a 2 series or a 3.0. I don't remember off the top of my head. This was in the Slack. Had mentioned that when he was looking at the Meteor core code, it looked like there were a number of async functions that, or await functions that didn't have a balancing async or something like this. Do you remember reading this note? And I think it was
not the one you specifically are mentioning, because I have been this and previously were very busy for me, and I don't think it's going to change until I get to America and get a chance to breathe a bit out. So sadly, I do not know, but there has been a lot of async fixes and improvement. Natural has quite a few PRs in this regard, so I think this will be something for us to cover more next week, where we'll go more deeper into all the news with Meteor 3.
Well, this in a sense is really geared towards the folks that are in the chat right now. I see Gabriel is in the chat with us. We have Kelly in the chat. Hey, Kelly. Always great to see Kelly. Daniel Reese. I don't know. Daniel, have we met before? I don't remember if we have, but it's really great to see you there. Harry's in with us. And so, Gabriel, I think that this was an item that was addressed to Danielson, and Danielson said he was going to look into it. I was just curious as to, if this, where this is being followed up with, and if we have any news for Per or anybody else that might have an interest in this. I also see that Lori is in the chat. Hi, Lori. It's good to see you here. Always great to have you guys here with us. And we have one of the things I'm going to say is today is our talk is a little light. We're talking about the data layer, and we're going to get to the point where we're going to be talking about alternative storage or data access layers in Meteor. And when we get there, if there's anybody in the chat that might like to join us, let us know, and we will send you the link to the studio so you can pop in with us. And I'm thinking right off the bat that Kelly might be somebody that might be interested in popping in with us. We haven't seen Kelly in a bit, and Kelly, of course, is somebody that we're very, very fond of, and also has a lot of information and has spent a lot of time in Meteor. So, Kelly, if we're not scaring you away right now to hide, perhaps you might want to come in a little bit. So just let me know, and what I'll do is I'll get into the Slack and drop you the studio link. Obviously, we don't want to drop that link everywhere because we don't want to get bombed, right? So it's one of those things where we're kind of keeping a limit on where we're sending it. So that's why. But again, whether it's Kelly or somebody else here, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate. Okie doke. And yeah, go ahead.
So that's that. Going into, say, our main topic.
Yeah.
Let's take a look on
GraphQL. Let's introduce this, right? So the thing is, this segment is one of our missing host, who is part of our little triumvirate here, is Jan Küster. And Küster had some family obligations today that has taken him away from us. And out of frustration, he really wanted to do his presentation. So he recorded it, and he had it available. And we're going to show you what he has to say.
So I think we are going to go full screen and mute ourselves for this. See you in a bit.
Yeah, hello, fellow meteorites. This is Jan Küster from Germany back here on Friday. This time only as a recording because I have private things to do today. And I'm coming into the data layer discussion with some blog article from Michael Watson from the GraphQL team, the Apollo GraphQL team, sorry. And he states GraphQL is the future for APIs. And very strong premise, but it has a very focused topic. So it's about enhancing developer portals and for these new platform engineering methodology, where it's all about that developers get this single gateway access to APIs, to the data layer, know what to do, where to find things, play around, get automatically the documentation about, but also bundling APIs from anywhere, coordinate all that, and have this centralized governance. And this is an interesting thing because he linked this study from Gartner that 80% of the organizations will establish platform engineering by 2026. I looked that up, and for those who don't know what all this platform engineering is about, it's basically an emerging trend in infrastructural changes, like you've seen with DevOps, and now there is platform engineering, and it's basically about company infrastructure that might have legacy things, new things, constantly evolving apps, services, conventions, protocols, and everything getting moved towards something called a digital platform that has, on the one hand, these services that are available to consume, but at the same time, like a developer portal where everything is bundled. And of course, there is GraphQL, a very strong technological foundation that could be used for that. And so I was reading this a bit, and then I was thinking, is GraphQL definitely the only one that we could think of being here inside this data layer being present? Because the data layer is actually that the central thing. APIs, the data layer, how data will be presented, consumed, how it will be available, and so on. And I think there are also some other technologies out there that might be considerable. Not as only technology, but I think there will be some hybrid setups. So GraphQL will definitely play a vital role there, but there are also technologies like gRPC, for example. So you have services communicating to each other. And in order to standardize things beyond services that may have different technologies in use, and this is also seen in this graphic here, C++ services, Ruby service, Java-based service, and they're all communicating each other with each other um, in a way that you don't need to exchange things like a JSON or an XML, and then you need to parse them, especially when it comes to parsing and then translating things that might get very troublesome very easily, and then you need to configure that in each service all the time. And with these protocol buffers, you can define a little bit similar to GraphQL. You can define what's queried, what's sent, and then it's just about how they fetch these things. So you need to implement, of course, some methods to fetch that stuff, and the rest is handled by gRPC for you. And it's not sent as a string based, but as a binary based data over the wire. So this is especially interesting for server to server, while of course the approach with GraphQL might be much more interesting when you have have many client applications consuming several APIs. And I found related to that an interesting article from Lawrence Sands Ramshaw, also someone who already contributed to Meteor, as I've seen in the contributor list, because I got curious after seeing DDP and Meteor in his experience, and I was looking at it. And hi, Lauren, thanks for the article. And he wrote some comparison and with much more getting into detail than I'm doing right now. And so if you're someone considering what's the difference between gRPC and GraphQL, you might look up this article. It's very cool, in depth about transport schemas, compatibility, and so on. And it also shows some strengths and weaknesses and a verdict. And this is basically what I also found already, that server to server, this gRPC might be much more interesting than GraphQL, of course. And at the same time, if you have something like towards platform engineering, GraphQL might definitely be an interesting player here. Now, there's also something called TRPC, and I just wanted to bring this up because this is also some kind of related to the data layer, but and it sounds similar to gRPC. So I first was thinking this is like gRPC with TypeScript or something, but no, it's not. It's something that is only in the JavaScript realm available, while gRPC is technology independent, or intended to be technology independent. This is only on the JavaScript realm. And this helps you to write your endpoints or your procedures, your methods on the server, and automatically have these types on the client available. So it automatically makes the types available on the client, and then helps you even with code completion to write your code on the client that's automatically compliant with what you defined on the server. And this is especially interesting because when you're on the scale between this and a single application, I mean, this is definitely enterprise scale. This is like GitHub. This is super big scale. And on the other side, there is like me as a developer writing a standalone application. And in between all this is usually, I think, this, because what's the reality of like a small to mid-sized company? They have some applications, but it's not feasible for them maybe to do platform engineering, build a huge platform, but they have already some apps that have grown to a certain size. They have a good bunch of developers working on that, and they have to have constant effort of managing knowledge, documenting things, and so on. And this might be a big help here and for these teams. And so I would consider not only the GraphQL the only future for APIs, but also things like TRPC or gRPC. And I can also say that there's also some future for Meteor in the data layer, because Meteor also brings its own data layer specification, and it's currently bound to WebSockets. So this is also maybe some kind of a blocker, but it doesn't need to be, because Meteor also has a history of being very integrative with other technologies. So, for example, with Apollo, like the GraphQL implementation, what the initial blog article company was basically the former MDG guys. And Meteor has this Apollo integration, so you can definitely have GraphQL with Meteor also. And from what I've seen with gRPC and TRPC, as there are node libraries, there might also be some integration for them. Now, here's the blocker. Usually we have the DDP protocol saying exactly how the client communicates with the server in regards to Meteor methods and Meteor publications. And I think this is a very closed ecosystem because it's basically bound to Meteor. And what I think for the future, what we should see here, and this is what I really would love to see, is that Meteor opens up and enables that if I define a method, that I don't need to call that method only by having implemented the DDP specification over WebSocket, but maybe I can call this method just because it's also defined as an endpoint, or an automatically generated documentation. I mean, this is basically in this GraphQL article, this is a premise, this is considered a big advantage. Everything is self-documented. And I can tell you this, from the Python realm, there is a Fast API. It's a framework for building web applications around your Python modules. And it brings automatically, it's very easy. You define an endpoint. Yeah, you have a data model here. You define like item, you have a name, a description, price, and tags. Then you define an endpoint, a post endpoint items, and then creating that item. And if you pass this class, it's like a schema. We know this from our Meteor methods. This is the same what we do when we define a schema for our methods with gem method or with validated method, and then it's validating the input, but it's also automatically generating a documentation for this with the open API specification for documentations, and then let you play around with it. This is so nice to play with these things and see how it behaves on certain edge cases or whatever I'm throwing in there. So this is something I think that could be implemented in Meteor as well. And coming back to the DDP specification, I think we have to think about this being integrative with other technologies at any time for Meteor in the future. So especially that it's not closed only to WebSocket, only to DDP, but we also still need to be able always to do other things, to be also maybe to allow TRPC. Maybe there is one day we have TRPC as a core package in Meteor. And then if you write a Meteor application, you write a Meteor method, then you have to define your schema. And on the client, you automatically import these types, and then you have the benefit of all that what TRPC does. I think Meteor is not far away from that. It's just a question if we will be able to integrate that, as it looks on the surface very easy, but of course under the hood it's much harder. Still, since we have no fibers anymore, we have lots of blockers gone and could try to move forward. Because, and this is the point where I wanted to get, if we look at that, consider this, there are many companies out there having Meteor as their running internal apps on top of Meteor. There are many in-house applications developed with Meteor. Of course, there are also products around Meteor. And if you want to consider this for Meteor, then there needs to be definitely some way that Meteor will integrate with the overall ecosystem that will be part of these platform engineering efforts. And with this, I'm giving it back to you guys and to see what you're discussing about that. What's your opinion? Maybe I'm totally in the wrongs here. But anyway, I really love to see how this all evolves, and especially how Meteor will play its role in all that game. And with that, I wish you all a great weekend and see you next Friday back in person, and all the best.
All right, we are back.
Yeah, let's just drop that background we don't really need, like all of those icons in the back there in the meantime. But I think there's been some discussion in the chat while that was playing. So apologize, guys, for the low volume. That's the best we could do with the audio that we got from the video, and we didn't realize that it was playing so low. We tried to increase the volume. It wasn't doable at our end. So I think we'll have to go back to that video clip and see what we can do to increase the volume on the source. So, as we say sometimes, technical difficulties. So Kelly, has, like, when I think of Kelly and GraphQL, I think of like a cat and water. There is not a natural affinity between the two on this, and Kelly is very open about his thoughts. Hang on, let's see what he says. I would love to see type safety on top of the data layer. That's one where Meteor should dig in on specialization. I'm not sure I'm following. Oh, hang on. This is, I think, the more relevant comment. I use GraphQL every day and love it. No, he doesn't say love it. He says a very strong emotion. He does not like it. So, does anybody else have strong feelings about GraphQL? Hang on, let's see. So, Lori says,
Local versus SQL. We'll get to that.
And
So-
yeah, so hang on a second. So Gabrielle was trying to dig a little deeper, and Kelly has responded, and Gabriella says, have you tried any of the flavors of, what is that, GraphQL?
Yeah.
And haven't got a response yet on that. Okay, and Simon is has had some concerns with the audio. Simon, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we pointed out that the audio on the video that was being played, we had it at the maximum setting that we could get on our side on the replay, but there is something inherent in the video itself that we need to address. So, again, the video can be released. Probably, I'll talk to Küster about it, but I think that we could probably release the video as a standalone. And if we're able to amp up the audio on that, we can have it available as another video that you can find on the website. So hang on, let's see. The hot conversation continues in the chat. I want to make sure that the people that are not in the chat are privy to, what's going on here. Gabrielle's only response is,
So I think with GraphQL and with Apollo as well has been moving towards, you could say, the original intention of GraphQL, which is really to help large organization manage their data sources and kind of have like one access point for all of their data for the application and so on. But once it was released, of course, there was a big hype around it. So everybody started implementing it into everything, even where it doesn't really fit. I would say I am, in a way, in my own work, I'm also implementing it where it isn't necessary, because I don't have any big organization with, multiple databases and stuff like that. So for that case, it's really not the proper way to implement it, or like to use GraphQL as I'm using it with just my existing MongoDB and maybe some REST calls somewhere else. So then that's an issue, and that kind of goes with everything, including MongoDB. It has a specific users, even though MongoDB has been expanding like crazy into pretty much everywhere where they can. And that's also kind of the story with Apollo. It has kind of, let's say, went from the cycle, and you will see it if you look on the Apollo GraphQL website. It has very much shifted towards big corporate. They are pushing their super graph or whatever it's called, which for me, where I have only a few GraphQL's definitions, it's way out there. So that's kind of the big thing to keep in mind, when you're going into GraphQL, that it's really for a larger multi-database data that you need to get into, say, one application.
Yeah, so Kelly's thought is there, and let's see, we have for solo devs and full stack. I sometimes feel like TRPC looks like the best option. That's interesting. Gabrielle, you do with TRC. So is it possible, Gabrielle, that we might see an official TRPC package down the pipe? If you GraphQL
Yeah.
has a fancy API, reduce all security parts. Yeah.
So that's that. With the TRPC and all that stuff, all the other modern stuff, it always
Mhm.
makes me think of believe things like Hono, and maybe it will be, instead of trying to integrate it into Express and all that, we might probably, or with Express, we might just use some package to get it in.
Right.
But then, we might have, I think, a more productive discussion. Where do we want the server to be? How do we want to handle it? And, I'm very fond of Hono recently and what they are doing, which has, our RPC and other awesome things out of the box with so many other options. So I think that's when once we start discussing Meteor for something to get to it. But I think for right now, we should go back to core of Meteor. And one of the
Yes.
core things in Meteor is MongoDB.
That's right. That's right. So, Jan, I think you did some digging in here, and there's been some recent news with the newest release of MongoDB and Meteor, correct?
Yes. So Meteor 2.15 and also the latest beta have been updated so that you can use MongoDB 7, which is the latest version of MongoDB. And let me just play this here without any sound in background. And like with every new release, in most cases, we have enhanced performance. They say they have a smoother migration, streamlined developer experience, and stronger security. Specifically, something that they call queryable encryption, so help better secure the data on field by field basis and so on, which they were kind of showcasing quite a while back, as well as they're constantly increasing these options for people who need encryptions in their applications. So that's kind of the big thing for MongoDB 7. I've also found out that there is MongoDB 7.1, but this one is what they have done here, because you can remember back a few years there were a lot of feature releases of MongoDB, but
Yep.
lately we only got kind of the big releases. But I found out that there is something called rapid releases in MongoDB, which is like 7.1, 7.2, and so on. But these are only for MongoDB Atlas and not pretty much for everybody else, though I will have to double check if they actually are on my servers that I have in Atlas as well. And that one, it's kind of a little bit like a preview of what's to come in the next major release, and it has also some specific features for Atlas and improvements. So that's when it comes to releases. As mentioned, actually it was in Meteor 2.14 and 3.0 beta for that MongoDB 7 was available. This is especially important because if you are on a free tier in Atlas, that's the version that you should have been already migrated to. Yes. So that's where this is. And of course, around MongoDB, there is a lot of long-standing myths, like similar with Meteor, that nobody uses it. It's trash, and it has X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F problems. And as it's usually the case, a lot of these things are usually outdated, or in one or in another case, people just trying to shoehorn to MongoDB to do something that it was not designed to do, which sometimes you can do, but it's really not the best approach, and there are better approaches specific to MongoDB. One of them, is say, oh, you don't have any stored procedures in MongoDB, and we have here this article that you actually do. It's just called different, because like it's MongoDB, you don't have tables and rows, you have collections and documents, and the closest that you can come into are aggregation pipelines, which are also used for other things, but you have a lot of other additional things like vector search, full text search on Atlas. And even on Atlas, you have something like triggers, which has its pros and cons. Triggers and actions. Is it actions, I believe? Let me quickly check. Okay, so it's triggers. If you're using Atlas, you have that available. So that's pretty much a self-running aggregation on database that you can trigger under specific operations. So if you insert a document to this, to this collection, then copy it to this other collection or with these changes. So that could be similar to what if you have like the collection hooks package, where we can have after insert, you can put that onto the database. But then it's a question, okay, what is the best pattern that you want to achieve? And then you get into the kind of issue of separation of roles, database managers and developers and all that stuff. So things to really be aware of. But you can also have schedule triggers, so you can have like a small cron jobs running at a predefined schedule, which is something I will probably be looking into more, and so on. And that's very important to remember when choosing any technology, not just database, but also same thing with Meteor. Meteor has its benefits, and it's very good in specific settings. In other settings, I would not choose it because it just is not made to do that. And trying to use it, for example, just for static pages is it's a nice
overkill
project, but it's it's overkill, and there are better tools out there to get the job done. So that's kind of one thing. What you'll usually see when there's like a lot of hype is, okay, now we have say Next.js, so we have to use it for absolutely everything. And it's not just Next.js, but whatever is the current hype thing, people try to shoehorn it with everything. And I think underneath that is a layer that people are just looking for the one ring, one framework or one package that they can just learn and be set for all use cases and everything. And sadly, that doesn't exist. Though maybe some people will disagree.
I think the argument people have is, in traditional relational databases, the ability to have things like stored procedures is central and core to the database. The database handles that itself, right? It allows you to write some code and then pre-compiles it and allows you to pass parameters to it and so on. The idea is actually that you're offsetting the computation to your database server. And in traditional enterprise setups, your database servers tend to be very big, as one of my former employers used to say, very big honking heavy metal, right? You buy this really massively resourced box, and then instead of having your application server do the query computations, you want it done on the database server. I think as we've progressed and we've become larger consumers of data, it used to be that your data on your server was consumed by your employees. So you had a limited amount of traffic hitting these big boxes. and it kind of made a lot of sense back then. But now we have the internet, where we're allowing the end user outside the organization to make queries against the database, and that model doesn't really scale very well, and it doesn't work as well. Number one. I think there is a role for stored procedures. I know that when we were building at SpeedCycle, when we were building applications, and we had stored procedures on the database server. We were using Microsoft MS SQL. We were seeing some degradation in performance because every time those stored procedures got hit, I don't remember whether or not it was a caching issue, whatever, but we'd get like some slowdown performance on the database server. So, there is something to be said about distributing the role of these pieces of code that in the past would have performed better on the database server outside of it onto some other dedicated service, like, a Lambda type service, which is effectively, what Atlas, I believe, does. And then, of course, the same thing with triggers. Triggers are just, again, pre-computed, allows an update based on some change to state, right? And it would just automatically trigger a change to the underlying data in the database someplace. Run a report, make an update, do something. And again, it's one of those things I think that the folks over at MongoDB have said, look, we have ways of, implementing this functionality, not necessarily directly in the database code, and why put that extra service or extra burden on the database? Why not just, make it part of a distributed service? So I think the argument there is, yeah, some of these things were missing, but, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the core database itself. You can have these features and you can build them, and we just move them into sort of a middle layer. But in a distributed system, it might make more sense to have it work there than, on the main database thread, or thread pool. So I'm not sure exactly what the design decisions are over at MongoDB on that, but I think the argument is, look, I mean, you can get the same capabilities, in MongoDB that you get in some of these, excuse me, other legacy database, relational database systems. But it's a different model, and it behaves a little differently. And so what? I think that's the argument there. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Once you said it, big thing, of course, we've seen that MongoDB is pushing, of course, their hosting offering with Atlas, so they are integrating a lot of other additional things to it. So they actually have also, say, their own microservices and other things. And recently, when I look at it, I noticed they also added a new feature, which you can see here is in preview, which is called develop application. And if you add application name to your connection string, which is identical to whatever the name you have here, then it will analyze and offer you some tips and tricks how to improve things. So this is where I have implemented it. Let me switch to that. So that's like how it looks when it's implemented. And so there's like some advisory.
It profiles your code. Is that what it does?
Yes. Well, Atlas has also a lot of recommendations as well, but this is kind of in general. So it here tells me, I should optimize connection pools, which I'm working on, but running into some bugs there. There's things like network compression, and of course that I should upgrade to newer Node.js driver version, which will be done once I get to Meteor 3. And there are some other additional resources, and I really like this because it tells me a lot of information.
It's actionable.
Yes, not just actionable, but I might not have heard about it before, or it's a new feature, and I'm not paying too close of an attention to MongoDB. Not like with Meteor, where I every day I check out what's the new thing, what's happening. So having it in an advisory like this is very useful. Of course, let's just use this as a example. Let's go over here. Where was it? There is also profiler and performance advisor, which analyzes, for example, your indexes to see if I had schema implemented. So here it tells me I have one redundant index, which of course would be harming my performance because it's redundant. I haven't had any, like, for example, it didn't have any method calls to it recently, or there was no query going on there. So stuff like that. So there's a lot of other thing, and of course we can just quickly take a look here at the advertise triggers. So we can set up triggers here and all that stuff, among other things. And they have here like app services. So they have a lot of crazy.
There is a command line tool that you can use, and it's been in MongoDB forever. It's called Explain. And you run that over your database, and it takes a look at your data structure. It takes a look at, if you don't have a declared schema, and it will make suggestions on what you can do in terms of improving your lookup and your write operations, and tell you where you might want to apply an index or a compound index, and what your performance would be if you were to do that, your performance gains. And it's one of those things where maybe not that many people know about it. I believe they've implemented it in Compass itself, so you don't have to worry about using an arcane command line tool. But there are plenty of things. I think the takeaway here, by the way, and I've said it before, is that if you want to write good Meteor applications, Meteor is built on MongoDB. And I don't care whether or not you like it or you hate it. That's the fact. And if you want to build really good Meteor applications, one of the things you need to do is get a better understanding of MongoDB. And if you have that understanding, it'll give you a tremendous amount of insight into how you can make your applications far more performant by using some of those capabilities. It'll also highlight some of the things that I don't think we've resolved very well. Sharding, for instance, is a method for also scaling out large data sets on MongoDB. I know that when I was over at MongoDB, there was a discussion because we had some issues with distributed shard keys and how Meteor is able to take advantage of it. And there was some problems with, like, I think it was called like the double document return or something like that. I forget exactly what the phrase was, but way back, there was an issue about the reliability of using sharded clusters in a Meteor application. And I don't know if that problem had ever been resolved, but it's one of those things where if you can actually use a sharded cluster, I mean, you could build very, very large scale Meteor applications, or Meteor applications that takes advantage of very, very large scale data sets. And I think that is something that, I hope that's been resolved. I've never had a use case for it. And I don't know if anybody from the Meteor team has any customers that do use it in that way. So there are, as I was implying there, that is, for instance, one of the drawbacks. If it's not properly implemented, it's something that is capable and available in MongoDB, but may not be available to MeteorJS users. So, but I'm hoping that gets resolved. And of course, the other thing is we're still telling the op log when MongoDB has change streams, which is their official way of notifying application developers about changes that are being made to the database. And I think that there's been a long thread of discussion on trying to use change streams with Meteor and then adopting it formally into Meteor. But I think that is something that's been sitting on the sidelines while we've been involved in the migration away from fibers onto async await. And I don't know if Gabrielle is still in the chat. But
No, he
if he wants
sadly
to
had to
comment
go.
on that, yeah, it looks like he might have popped out. But if he's available and he wants to comment on that later on, we'd love to hear whatever the updates are. But again, it's like if you get to know MongoDB well, you'll get to understand where you need to kind of adjust to be able to take advantage of the strengths of MongoDB, and then of course the things that might be missing because Meteor doesn't take advantage of it or can't take advantage of it. So, that's my 2 cents on this. Am I throwing in too much hot water here?
No, I think if we think we have covered in the past as well.
We did.
Just
Yeah.
interesting. Kelly mentioned here that for SQL, something called Planet Scale has rolled out some new features that can analyze database and your SQL schema and make recommendations. So, good ideas spread around. And I would say, especially when it comes to hosting and all that stuff, especially when it comes to hosting things globally, that's one of my favorite feature that Atlas has that I so want to utilize in the future, because they have this option that you can, once you reach M30, you can then go and create additional global zones and have everything under one management, which normally to do stuff like this is such a pain.
Sure.
And pretty difficult, but and they have it here through a nice thing. So I'm still hoping that something like this could be developed in the future for Galaxy as well, and other hostings in general, to have these, one command deploy and it deploys internationally your application through all the different servers and all that stuff. So, and it has here all the other settings, that you need, and a lot of other things. So in this way, it's very much a an inspiration for me.
Sure.
And hoping for that. But as I said, this planet scale thing is very new to me in MySQL world, because I haven't been there in a long time. And if this is, not sure, maybe Kelly can tell us about it more. Pretty much maybe replacement to the traditional MySQL setup. So
yeah, I think being able to I think the idea when you have a SaaS and you're exposing these free products like Postgres or so on, where you don't have to pay for a license to run that service, means that you need to find a way to differentiate your service offering and keep people in. And so I think that's what's driving some of these tools that we're seeing on tools like on things like Atlas and Planet Scale, because they do offer something unique that perhaps if I can keep you in because I'm allowing you to get some real deep insight into your application, your database, whatever it might be, and its performance, and I can help you save money, then you might want to stick around with me for the loyalty, because obviously I'm showing you how you can get better performance out of the resources that you are renting from me. And I think that is a good business decision. And I think that's going to keep driving more and more of these service offerings to find different ways to differentiate themselves and keep you on their platform, rather than, say, hey, this is a commodity service. Anybody can set up a hosted service on open source software. So why should I stick with you? Why not just do the race to the bottom on the dollar? So I think this is part of the reason that we're seeing this innovation. It's being driven by market need and a need to differentiate. And I think that's a good thing for the end user, right? The folks that are developing applications. It's great, because the more that they can help us understand our applications better, understand its performance, understand where we can fine tune it to get the best performance for our dollar and make it as reliable as possible for our customers, then the more likely it is that we're going to stick around. So, you know, that's, again, I'm sorry, my other hot take on this.
Yeah. To
So
kind of close this off with the MongoDB stuff. MongoDB, at least according to the DB Engine's ranking, is the 5th most used database. It's the top document database, but still the 4 before that are relational databases, SQL ones. And coming right after that, we have Redis, which is a key value store. And kind of surprisingly, here we have Elasticsearch, which is a search engine. So I wouldn't necessarily call it the database, but it does has a lot of, to be able to do that, it has all those things, and you can see even IBM and other stuff here.
Yeah. A few years ago, I mean, some of these were like, this was quite a different space, I believe, when I was with MongoDB. By the way, we used to look at this every week, DB Engine's ranking, and this was the way that we tried to figure out whether or not the efforts we had towards evangelizing and promoting and letting people know about MongoDB was effective. And so that informed, what the sales team did. It informed what the marketing team did. It informed where the engineering team needed to look in terms of who was saying that, MongoDB was different, and not, and in some ways inferior. There are a lot of different people like throwing arrows at you, and you have to kind of figure out, well, when somebody's speaking and they're speaking from a position of strength, what is it that they're saying that differentiates them? And you don't want to really fight the little guy that's saying, well, yeah, I've got a automated logging system that, my customers really like, and it's only like 10 customers. But then IBM is saying, well, we have triggers, right? And that's the thing that differentiates. I'm not saying that's the conversation that was had, but I'm just saying that you're going to start paying attention more towards, nullifying those competitive advantages in terms of the conversations that you have with customers. So it's really interesting to see MongoDB today in the top 5, because it was a long journey to get there, and it is amazing. Back then, there were a lot more document database competitors, CouchDB, DocumentDB. There were others. I'm trying to remember what some of them were. CouchDB was one. I think Couchbase was another. It's a different database altogether, right? And so there were all these other ones that were vying for position. But my point, though, is that the fact, when you take a look at MongoDB and you take a look at its score, relative to everybody else, Oracle has a large installed base. It is very, very difficult to unseat. You're not going to unseat it. But the other thing too is MongoDB doesn't sell itself as a SQL replacement. It sells itself as a SQL complement. It is the database that you use for your other data that is not well structured in tables and rows. And so, that is the position that they put themselves in. And, so they're not a direct threat to the others. And I think the point to some of the data access conversations that we have is, if you have very well structured data for your application, and that's your organization has that, and you have really clear, data access patterns already figured out, then a document database may not be the best solution for you. But it doesn't mean that because Meteor is built on MongoDB and what you get out of that, out of the box, batteries included, is this native reactivity, is that you need to necessarily have that. We don't always have to have reactive applications, and there are plenty of people that build Meteor applications that are not relying on the reactivity as part of it. They're looking at Meteor as a way to build applications quickly in a holistic way, because you have your accounts package, you have security built in, you've got a whole bunch of other benefits that come from it. And so I'm going to transition over here, by the way, now that we're on the DB engines ranking thing, to talk about.
I just before that, quickly, Alim, I want to kind of
please.
mention here, like out of the document-based databases, MongoDB has king, and the earliest that kind of the next one comes here is Couchbase, old competitor. Then we have Firebase, and
I think
check out DB, and then Google, and finally here also we have Rome around right down to 52, which was acquired by MongoDB. And I think the interesting thing here is I went to a presentation a while back about it, and it's a it's for mobile applications. But here's also some you might probably recognize for JavaScript as well here. And this one, syncs with MongoDB. So in a way, it's similar to MiniMongo with a few, or there are quite a few similarities. So I was thinking, especially once we get Meteor 3 out, or once we start looking again at the data layer, this is something I think that should be investigated and looked at, how maybe we could take advantage of Realm as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned Couchbase is the next one, which is like down the bottom at 36, but there's actually one that's a little higher up, which is Amazon DynamoDB. And the story behind DynamoDB is they basically took the MongoDB code, stripped out things from it, and over time have added things to it. But basically it's, there was a big fight years ago with MongoDB and Amazon about this. They wanted to have a MongoDB compatible service that they could sell for less than including MongoDB as part of the AWS offering. So that's a story there. So when you're taking a look at DynamoDB down the pack here at 16, what you are actually seeing is, a clone in a sense of MongoDB at a particular stage. Now they've done their own things to it. I'm not sure how far it's evolved and what it does, but I think it still has a wire compatible protocol with MongoDB. I think that's one of the things that they sell as part of it, that you don't need all of the features of MongoDB. If you just need a basic document database, then DynamoDB is something that you could turn to. So, but I think your point is made pretty well clear. MongoDB is sitting at the top of the pack here. Meteor is built on top of it. I don't think that it should be viewed as a liability, and not because I'm a former MongoDB developer. I didn't work in the development side. MongoDB employee. I actually came to MongoDB from Meteor. I mean, that's how I got hired there, and then left. But I don't think that MongoDB is necessarily a liability in the way that people make it out to be. It is a different type of database. It has its own, issues. Every database has its issues. It's got its strengths and it's got its weaknesses. And in the case of when we're talking about relational data, I would go with a relational database. And as a matter of fact, one of the things I want to point out, I'm going to jump around a little bit in my own part of the presentation here, is that there has been in the past packages that people have written for SQL databases and other non-relational databases for Meteor. And for instance, there is a MySQL package in Atmosphere that is available. I don't know if it's current. Do we know if that's current?
Yeah, for if you mean Vlasky MySQL,
yeah.
I would say that's definitely current.
Okay.
Like it has last update over a year ago, but that's completely fine. So
yeah.
whenever anybody says that Meteor cannot do MySQL or SQL, Lasky gets very angry and starts spamming the link to his package. So
Yeah. So I think that's the mistake people make. Now, the thing is, if you're going to have a relational database in the absence of MongoDB anywhere in the architecture, then it's basically going to be a non-reactive application the way Meteor is architected today. And in the past, we've had packages like IBM, an IBM DB2 Informix package. We've had a SQL Server package that has been available. We've had an Oracle package that's been available. There's a deprecated SQLite package. So the point is that community developers like you have written these packages in the past and have been able to use the databases. How much of the functionality? I don't know. I haven't used these in the past. And I don't know if they've run into any upper limits with it. But it doesn't mean that you can't use Meteor with a database. And, if direct access and using direct features is something that is difficult to do, or perhaps not possible with a native driver of some kind, then there's always the opportunity to write a GraphQL layer. Sorry, Kelly. Write a GraphQL layer and write resolvers to the database on an individual basis and access your data that way. So that is something that I would point out here. And as far as other reactive substitutions, we have the Oracle. I'm sorry, the the Redis oplog, which is really just an additional layer on top of the application that allows you to cache your messages separately and allows your application to scale, where you're not overwhelming the database with requests for too many messages. And so, we have that. But recently there has been a drop-in replacement for MongoDB itself by a company called FerretDB, and FerretDB is something we're watching pretty closely. I think the I'm going to talk about cockroach in a minute. The the Meteor team, I know, has been in contact with the FerretDB folks, and so they have a drop-in replacement that has the same wire protocol as MongoDB. It is built on top, I believe, of Postgres, so it uses that as its storage layer, but it effectively is able to give you the full reactivity that you get out of MongoDB. So there are many, many opportunities to use different data access types and data storage types for a Meteor application. You are not stuck with MongoDB. And if you want to be a little intrepid and if you want to be a little bold and you don't find a package that is there, you can try to write one yourself. As far as the packages that have been there in the past that may have been, I don't want to say abandoned, but are not actively supported right now, again, it's one of those things where you can take a look at it and you can see what you might need to do to upgrade it, reach out to the package maintainer, and if they're not interested in moving forward, you can fork it and do the upgrade yourself. If the complaint is that we don't have officially supported by the Meteor team, officially supported drivers for other, or packages drivers for other databases, non-SQL databases, then I guess you might be right on that. We don't. But it doesn't stop you from taking Meteor and extending it. And that's, I think, one of the beauties of Meteor is its extensibility. Okay. So with that, I'm done with my part. Now, I started recording on this because I was going to do the same thing that Küster did with his piece and make that available because it would come out a little cleaner and not so much foot in the mouth behavior from me. I am still going to finish the recording that I'm doing because I think I want to release it as a standalone also. And that way, if you don't want to, or if you're not able to watch the whole thing And actually, I think that there are some issues I addressed in that I didn't quite get here. So if you want a more crafted experience, you can look for that. So I'm going to be working on that over the weekend, hopefully releasing it Monday or Tuesday, if I get it all done. So yeah, do you have any comments to make on these other
Yes.
packages that I was?
Pretty much, if there is npm package and you don't want or require reactivity,
Didn't think of that.
then you can just get the npm package and be done with it. If you want reactivity, then for MySQL we have the Vlasky package, which provides reactivity. So that's it gets more complicated if you want reactivity, but other than that, it's you can just get the npm package and run any database you want.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's it for the news. And I mean, the news has become a little bit of a mix. As you can see, we're not just reporting on some recent updates in JavaScript and Meteor World. We're spending a little more time on topics I think that have a deep interest to us, and on the segments that matter to each of us on an individual basis. So, Jan, is there any more wrap up on news that you want to add here, or should we move on to our useful resources?
We can move on.
Okay, so Jan, do you want to take conferences, or do you want to do the CFPs? It doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
So I think I'll start with the conferences.
Sure.
We have it now scheduled. We start with the conferences that are coming up, and on March 7th in the Florence in Italy with pizza. We have Open Source Day 2024. Then on the American continent, the next day on March 8th, Frontrunners 2024 conference happening.
Yeah.
On March 15th or 14th and 15th, we are back on the old continent in Barcelona for WASM.io. And interestingly, we are switching here, from one continent to the other. So back to America for NGConf on March 18th to 21st. So for all your Angular guys, if you're in the area, check that out. And back again to the old continent for Germany, for Munich on the same, prolonged weekend or the same days, 18th to 21st of March. So that would be actually the beginning of the week, I believe. So that's JavaScript Days 2024 in Munich. And then we have March 18th to 21st, also online one, JavaScript Days online. And on March 20th, Web Dev Day 2024, also online. And on March 25th, we have two conferences in Europe, Fast.dev, Krakow JavaScript Conference 2024 in Krakow, Poland. That's on March 22nd. And then we have in Paris on the same day, React Paris. So kind of a very nice choice from that to go to if you want to go to a conference, which I would highly encourage.
So one of the things we have not done in this episode so far, because it's a little bit of a, we had a little bit of a shakeup this morning in terms of where we were, and so we're a little discombobulated. Apologies about that. But if you do like the episodes that we do and you like this episode, please hit the like, and that'll help the YouTube algorithm share this episode with others that might also benefit from it. In addition to that, if you find yourself here week after week and you have not subscribed yet, or you're coming for the first time and you'd like to find out more about when new episodes come up, hit the subscribe button, and that'll give you a notification when we post a new video or we schedule a new stream. And with that, I will go to the CFPs that are coming up. So one of the things we're trying to do is encourage as many of you to let people know about Meteor. And one of the ways you could do that is by submitting a proposal for a request at a talk, and it doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be earth shattering. It doesn't have to be a new discovery. It can be about an implementation that you did. It can be about a migration from one system to another that you did. It can be about how Meteor has been useful to you. Maybe it helped you do more work with a very small team that you might have needed a larger team to do in other ways. We need to let people know that Meteor's still around and it's still consequential. And so with that, I'm going to give you a list of some deadlines for calls for papers that are soon approaching that you might want to try to get a chance to do a talk at. One of them is JS Nation in Amsterdam, which is coming up in, 2 days. It closes on the 3rd of March. The React Summit is also a component, I believe, of the JS Nation conference, and that call for paper also closes on March 3rd. So if you've done some React development, maybe you are moving to React server components, you're doing something there, submit something. I'd say, the worst they could say is no. And the best that might happen is you might have an opportunity to really improve your standing within the professional community by being a speaker at one of these conferences. And then there is the DevOps conference in Berlin on April 1st. And we have the Utah conference 2024 that's going to be in Sandy, Utah. That deadline is coming up on the 3rd of April. And this week I'm going to be going away on vacation with my family. My daughter's home from university, and I will be working on a proposal for Utah JS conference right now. And so for now, that is the list that we have and are working with. And Jan, is there anything that you want to add there? Sorry, guys, I'm moving back and forth in my eyes on the.
No,
on
I
the
have.
slide
It's
here.
everything. I think has been, as far as I know, has been said.
Mhm.
So nothing there from me to add.
Okay. And so I think, let's see here. We're just going to try to wrap up at this point. Is there anything going on in the chat that we should share here? It seems like we've gotten some really passionate views on, preferences for how people want to build applications, the types of data layer that they prefer to use, their love or hate of GraphQL. And I guess part of it, I think, is just the ubiquity in terms of how much GraphQL has been pushed as a solution for everything, when, as Gabrielle has pointed out, there are clear use cases for different types of access technologies. And you don't always need to use one at the exclusion of another. It's good to have a robust and varied toolkit to go to for different reasons or different problem types. So should we go on to the final part of our program, the reminders that we want to
Yes.
let people know about? Okay. So we have one short up. I have another short coming later today that you look for. And I think Gabrielle has some original shorts. So the shorts that I'm doing are going to be pulled from past episodes, things that we have, edits that we have in the book, so to speak. And we're using that content to create some shorts. I'm sorry, not Gabrielle, but Jan Küster is in the process, I believe, of defining and composing some new shorts.
Yeah, speaking
So,
of Gabriel, he
Mhm.
is going to be on later on today on the official Meteor Software Twitch, talking about, I believe, the university and going through that. So that's
Mhm.
Meteor University. So if you're starting with Meteor, definitely tune in and maybe check out last week video as well there.
Yeah, and so one of the other things I want to point out, and Jan, if you want to get this up, I want to remind people, by the way, that we talked a little bit about sponsorships for the channel. We do have some individual sponsorships for our developers and anybody else in the Meteor community that would like us to, point out that they're doing work as part of the Meteor community. Let us know, and we'd be happy to point their sponsorship pages. So both of our Jans have GitHub sponsorship pages, and if you'd like to show your appreciation for the work that they do here and elsewhere, especially on the community packages that they maintain and release on a regular basis to make sure that you get the best benefit out of them, please consider sponsoring them in some way so that they can afford the coffee that has become their addiction and habit, so that they can stay up late at night and code like slaves. So that's probably not an appropriate thing to say. I probably should take that shoe out of my mouth again. But there it is.
In my
I've said
case,
it.
it's tea.
It's tea. Yes. So there you go. And Jan, if you don't mind, can you pull up the link to the deep dive playlist? Because one of the things I would like to point out is, if you found some value here and you're at Meteor for the first time, what you can do is, if you want to get to learn more about Meteor, is you can take a look at one of our deep dive episodes. The first episode that we did on our deep dives was on what was the title of it again?
We had Meteor
The
3 overview. Yes,
that's right. So you might want to start there and get a deeper understanding of Meteor as part of your journey. And then the follow-up to that was on Meteor's unique package system, which, if you get a chance, yes, we are able to use NPM packages from Node, generally speaking, but there are some additional powers you get from packages that are built in Meteor for Meteor applications. And if you're finding this to be useful and you've come here and you have some ideas and you have some takes and you have some comments on what we talked about in this episode, leave them in the comments section after we wrap up. If you're not here with us live, you can put it in the chat. But if you're coming afterwards and we are not live and we are recording, then leave your comments. We read them, we comment on them, we respond to them. So with that, what I would like to say is, coming up next week, we are talking about authentication. And what are we doing the week after that? Let me pull this up and take a look. Kind of try to give you guys a little bit of like our forward thinking. So next week, we're doing authentication. The week after that, we are going to be looking at Meteor sites or applications or websites that are built with Meteor that we find in the wild. And we'll look at them as a viewer coming in and not knowing anything about it, and make some comments about their implementation and so on. So if you have an app that you've built with Meteor that you'd like us to post on the program, and if you'd like to also be there to give some commentary or some background on it, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll take a look at it. We'll see whether or not we can recognize specific Meteor features. We'll demonstrate to people how they can recognize through the Chrome tools and other tools whether or not a site is running on Meteor. And with that, if I don't have I don't have anything else to add, but Jan, is there anything coming up that you want to talk about before we go?
On Monday, I will be looking into I will be showcasing how to build all out package so that you can connect to other additional services, to log in for your users.
And that is the conversation that you'll be extending into next week's episode, next Friday,
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Mhm.
So if you want to see the hands-on, go and check it out on Monday. Go on Storyteller's stream on Monday. And if you if you aren't able to make it, and I would recommend that you go, if you aren't able to make it, then Storyteller will give you a bit of a summary as to what happened on Friday. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Okay.